Okay, it's recording now.
Kyle wants me to tell the story of this knife which my dad made. Let me see. Did I decide about what year? I always like to date everything. So this would have been when I was probably about 15, maybe 16. So that would have been 1939 or 40 or 41, something like that. Anyway, my dad was he would refer to himself as a jack of all trades. He could do so many things. He could carve uh, ball bats, hammer handles, all kinds of wooden things. But anyway, this knife is made from an old crosscut saw. The blade is, and crosscut saw is like it's a long saw with wooden handles on each end, and it takes two men to use it to cut down a tree, and they sort of swing it back and forth. Is that a good description, Kyle?
Yeah, I think so. That sounds pretty good. We see those in cartoons a lot.
That's what a crosscut. Anyway, this old crosscut saw that he had was one he was discarding because I suppose he could no longer sharpen it or something. But he decided to make some what we should call carving knives. We always called them butcher knives back then. But he decided to cut it up. And you have to keep in mind that there were no tools, no electrical, no power tools, no electricity. And he worked sort of like the old-time blacksmiths would work by heating the metal, and then they use a chisel and a hammer, and I guess that he just would place the chisel, have the metal heated, and then place the chisel and hammer it along to where that he cut out the blade. And but it amazes me the way that he fastened the wooden handle onto the metal for the blade. And I don't remember. I remember when he was making the knives, but I don't remember how many he made. But I do remember this was one that he made for our next door neighbor down the road, who eventually became my mother-in-law. I married her only son, and so should I tell how I happened to have the knife?
Yeah, how did you?
I guess.
How were you able to get the knife into your
It's
possession?
such a long story. Everything I tell is a long-winded story. So anyway, when we bought this farm, we didn't move on to it immediately. It was a year and a half later before we moved on. But we would come down on weekends and pack a picnic lunch and bring down and do some work. But my mother-in-law had already moved to the farm in a little apartment on in one of the buildings. And so this Sunday we were picnicking, and I would bring things that I even had to cook, like fried chicken or something like that. And so I had this knife, my only carving knife, and it disappeared. I suppose that I wrapped it up in the old paper, the tablecloth and disposable tablecloth and that sort of thing, and probably put it in the trash, probably burned it. I never did know exactly what happened to my knife, but anyway, I was telling my mother-in-law about that I had lost my only carving knife, and she says, I have one that you can have, which turned out to be this knife. now, all these years later, because that happened about it was in 1959 that she gave me this knife. So, and it's now September of 2010.
Yep, September 12th.
So that's been...
Oh no, it's the 11th. Today is September the 11th,
yes,
2010.
Yes, it is. Yes, so that's been all these years.
So that's the story of the butcher knife that has the initials of M.M.
That's right. My dad carved, her name was Minnie Miller. I don't think we mentioned that her name was Minnie Miller. And my dad had carved her initials in this handle of this knife.
And on there we can see the pins that you were talking about earlier, about how he fastened the wooden handle that he carved onto the blade.
It's amazing how that they could make things back then with no tools, no implements like we have today. But they worked a lot like the old blacksmiths did. The old blacksmiths didn't have any power. They didn't have any electricity.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing on that. And it's even, I mean, it's still sharp to the touch. I mean, it's, well, that's good quality steel,
well,
I guess, using a...
The shape that he made the blade in a really carefully designed, carefully shaped, that they could really make things back then.
I guess this...
his name was Henry Jacob Troball.
That's true. We should mention who the craftsman actually was who made the knife.
Henry Jacob Troball. I am Dorothy Troball Miller.
Yep.
And my photographer is Kyle Miller.
Well, and this concludes the story of the M and M, or the Minnie Miller butcher knife. And until next time.